Did a video earlier this week talking about how Hurricane Beryl had hit land in Texas and like 2 million people were without power. Well, during the course of this event happening that they knew the trajectory of, Greg Abbott decided to take a trip to Asia. He was going to South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan. Now, while this was all going on, Joe Biden and FEMA were trying to get supplies and everything ready to go down in Texas. And as the FEMA regulations state, they can only do so much in advance, but they can't actually go in and start giving out the aid and stuff until they get an emergency declaration and a request from the governor, because that's how our system works. The individual states do have autonomy, things like that. The federal government can't just act unilaterally as far as doing things like this. They need the emergency request. Well, Greg Abbott's in China. Joe Biden can't get a hold of him. And Dan Patrick, the lieutenant governor, wasn't returning Joe Biden's calls, wasn't reaching out to Joe Biden. It took till sometime Tuesday before this all got resolved. Now, Dan Patrick says they weren't avoiding him, but either way, with Greg Abbott out of the state, the lieutenant governor was not on top of it. And when it comes to disaster response, quick time matters. And why would Greg Abbott leave the state ahead of a known hurricane coming? Those things don't spring up overnight. They knew for a while that this thing was coming and it could potentially hit Texas. But instead, he chose to go overseas and fled, just like Ted Cruz had tried to flee to Cancun during that cold snap. I hope voters remember in November how their Republicans treat them. That it's the Republicans who don't care if they get the disaster aid as quickly as possible, and they weren't there setting things up. But Joe Biden had tried to do as much as he could ahead of time, so as soon as they got the authorization, that FEMA could do what they had to do to start rebuilding everything after this natural disaster.